Hi, I'm Adrian Burnett. I'm the Head of Dance at the Australia Council for the Arts, and thanks for joining us for this week's Think Inside the Square. Our topic for this week is new experiences in the digital world. I'll be your host and MC for today's session. This is the 13th session in our series that we've created here on a Tuesday at 2 p.m, zoomed through Facebook Live. Today, we're taking a look at how the dance community has navigated and adapted during the COVID-19 pandemic and the new digital experiences that have emerged in this time. Before we get started and introduce today's panel, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the Eora Nation from which I'm coming to you today. And I'd also like to acknowledge the many nations throughout Australia that we are gathering from here online to talk about cultures and the new experiences in the digital world that we are all activating. I'd like to pay my respects to elders past and present and acknowledge all First Nations peoples present and online in this session. A little housekeeping before we get started. If you have a question for the panel, can you please place it in the Q&A box? If you're joining us through Zoom and if you're watching live from Facebook, place your questions in the comment box and we'll feed those back to the panel. Closed captions are also available through Zoom by clicking on the closed captions icon in the bottom menu bar. You can chat to the panel and other attendees through the chat box. We'd also like to welcome our Ausland interpreters, David and Chavoy from Sweeney Interpreting. So today we're joined by another wonderfully generous panel to talk about new experiences in the digital world. We'll be shining a lens on the dance community and how they have adapted during this period. Our first panelist is Dunn, the Executive Director of the Sydney Dance Company. Welcome, Anne.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Anne has 20 years experience in the performing arts and has been Sydney Dance Company Executive Director since 2010. She was previously the Darwin Festival General Manager, Perth International Arts Festival Program Manager and Artistic Administrator, and previously held roles in the Producers Unit of the Sydney Opera House and with the Sydney Olympic Coordination Authority. Over the last few months, a new group collective has emerged in the dance sector called Assembly. Joining us today to discuss how this group emerged are independent dance artists Lilian Steiner, Lydia, Connolly-Hiatt, and Sarah Aiken. Lydia is a settler worker as a dance maker and performer on unceded Wurrung country of the wider Kulin Nation. Lydia is a 2015 dance graduate of Unitec BPSA Aotearoa, and they make solo and collaborative work while performing with dance artists and companies including Shelley Lasker, Lilian Steiner, Chunky Move, Melanie Lane, Alan Davies, and Alice Hayward. Currently, Lydia is working on a new solo project for Chunky Move's Solitude program in partnership with the Tanya Lidke Foundation. Lilian Steiner, welcome Lilian, is a now Melbourne-based choreographer, dancer and performer and a graduate of the Bachelor of Dance program at the Victorian College of the Arts. Her practice champions the deep intelligence of the body and its unique ability to reveal and comment on the complexities of contemporary humanity. Lilian has one of 5 new commissions as part of Bleed, a new festival from Arts House and Campbelltown Arts Centre, and Lilian will talk a little bit more about that later in the program. Sarah Aiken is a Melbourne-based performer and choreographer. Sarah's work investigates authorship, scale, and the self, looking at the roles of audience, performer, subject, and object, and connecting tangibly with audience to consider performance as a site for empathy and exchange. And Joel is also a Melbourne-based dancer and performance maker. Joel is a proud Wiradjuri man who trained at NAISDA and WAPA and is an ongoing performer with Chunky Move. His works are intimate encounters, often unorthodox spaces in which audiences are invited in as co-storytellers in works engaging with Australian race relations and queer issues. So welcome everyone. Quite a list of bios there to get through. So I feel like we're in good hands this afternoon. And I'm going to start with you if I can. And obviously today's session is really focused on sort of the digital elements of what's happening in the dance community and how we're all interacting with that. And from my perspective, Sydney Dance Company has done an incredible pivot, that terrible word pivot, or adapted amazingly during this time. And I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about what that's meant for you as an executive director of one of our major dance companies.
Yeah, thanks, Adrian, and hello, everyone. It's really good to be here. It's funny, when COVID hit, about 3 weeks before COVID hit, La Scala got shut down. And at that point in time, we went, that's quite serious. And we did a risk analysis and a risk matrix at that point in time. So I think that was sort of late February. And, we kind of were like, oh, look, it'll never reach here. We'll never shut down. But just in case it does, what would we do? And it was actually at that point in time that we looked at what the opportunities might be. And for Sydney Dance Company, there's obviously the professional ensemble, but there's also a big open class program and a big educational program. So we kind of looked at each of those streams of activity. As COVID hit, we were in the theatre teching for a world premiere, and we found out, I think, in the Friday just before that, they were shutting down venues for over 500. So I had that very difficult conversation with the dancers, but we made the decision to go ahead into the theatre to do the technical work because we wanted to have that work under our belt. We'd already booked the theatre, and that way we knew we'd be able to get it up earlier. But that left the kind of other classes and so on, and that's where we looked at the digital realm at that point in time. So we very quickly looked at whether we could deliver classes online, and we did a big pivot, as you say, and we were able to move our online classes, our face-to-face classes online within 6 days, I think, of being shut down.
So you were really quite poised at that point already to be, you already had done quite a bit of work, as I understand it, to get that, to make that shift. Is that right?
We hadn't done a lot of literal work. We'd done thinking about the work. So that for a long time, it had been part of our kind of longer range strategic plan to start to deliver classes online and to, reach digital audiences that way. But what this did was speed it up enormously. But we had certainly done the thinking that that's what we would do. But it literally, our classes shut down because we actually had a student who rang us and said, I've been sent for COVID testing, which today you go, oh yeah. But in that point in time was a big deal. And I rang our company GP and went, hey, he's like, you need to shut down all of the classes. So we literally went from, I had 3 studios with 40 people in each studio. And we literally went class to class and shut them down that night. And then made that decision to move to online really quickly that night. So myself and our Chief Commercial Officer and our Director of Marketing sat in our boardroom till midnight that night going, okay, how are we going to do this? And it was kind of all hands on deck. And I had a team meeting with all of my admin staff about 2 days later, where I went, okay, think about your job descriptions and tear them up and throw them over your shoulder. And now this is how we're gonna sustain ourselves through this. So we need to think really laterally and creatively about how we as an organisation are going to completely shift what we do and be able to deliver it in a way that is economically viable. Because for us, there was a fundamental question. This would be a fundamental question about economic sustainability for the company.
So the word pivot has really got a new meaning for you and your team, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah. And the way that the public, I guess, if you're talking about the virtual classes, I mean, you're well known for for having high level teaching. Really great engagement with your public, and there's been a big uptake with the virtual classes, the virtual studios.
Yeah, look, so we did our first virtual classes online, I think, on March 27th. We've had about 36,000 classes attendees through that over that time. So in around 3 months. So yeah, no, there's been a huge uptake, and I think the other thing that's been super interesting about it is, obviously, we have a full-time ensemble of dancers who suddenly couldn't perform. And when I talked about throwing out your position description, that also applied to the dancers. I was very keen to make sure that the artists were supported through this. And so we're like, well, how do we redeploy people across the organisation? Suddenly I had a technical team with no shows to put on, an ensemble of dancers with no performances to do. So we went through a process, quite an iterative, very quick process about those classes around what did it actually take to make them deliverable. We trialed 1 or 2. We set up, I commandeered Raphael's office in our administration building. We set up a virtual studio in there. We borrowed some camera gear and we literally trialed out the first one. The very first one, Linda Gamblin, who's our head of training, delivered the very first one. And it was trial. She was so nervous, and we all were, and we did it through Zoom. Yeah. But actually really quickly we went, you actually need customer service assistance next to it. You need technical assistance next to it. So every class actually has 3 people delivering it as the teacher, and then a service assistant and a technician as well to help people through that. I can't connect to Zoom, or my internet's terrible, or I've booked the wrong class, or all those things.
Yeah, so I guess you and your staff and your colleagues in the team and the dancers have learned a lot through this. Do you think this is something that you'll keep in this kind of well, I guess we're not really there at post-COVID, are we? But in this kind of hybrid interim moment, as we're moving back into the studio, is this something that you'll keep these capabilities and keep these moving forward?
Look, absolutely. It's been really interesting. We got a huge amount of feedback quite quickly of people, the people that normally come to our classes are going, that's great, thanks so much. But lots of people reaching them that wouldn't normally come to class. They were far too, in the words of some of them, and probably myself included, far too terrified to actually walk in and do a class in a studio face to face, or they lived remotely, or they lived in another state or another time zone, or they had immune issues or disabilities or something. So it's been super interesting because we've reached a whole other market, and we opened up face-to-face classes back in the studio a week ago now.
How have people responded to that?
Really well. I mean, there's capped on numbers. Each class is capped at 20 people, but people quite like that. But every class has a wait list for it. But it's been interesting as well, the migration between virtual and face-to-face, and some people inhabiting both worlds and doing classes with us face-to-face, but sometimes virtual. The joy of a very early morning Pilates class where you don't have to go out in the cold and you can just do it in your lounge room. Great. Yeah, so we're certainly looking at a business model where we have a hybrid delivery going forward, and how do we service that, and what's the kind of viability point of that, from now in this kind of grey zone, but actually for the future as well.
I've got a question here from Rachel Mazza from Ilbidgery. Has it been financially viable for you as an organisation? And I suppose that's a big question. I was actually going to get to this a bit later, but we may as well talk a bit about it now in terms of that monetising. And this is a bigger discussion around broadcast and other things. But in terms of this, the virtual classes, has it been financially viable, or can it be?
So it's financially viable at the moment because JobKeeper. So we've been eligible for JobKeeper, so that's helped enormously. And what it has also meant, it was heartbreaking. We had this heartbreaking day where we had to let 70 casuals go the day we closed the studio, and we didn't know if we'd be able to get the virtual stuff up. We let 70 casuals know we couldn't roster them. So that was really heartbreaking. And then when JobKeeper came along, we were able to bring back about 40 of them. We'd had, sustained relationships with them and so on. And so they're all teaching in that space as well. And JobKeeper obviously helps the profitability enormously. We halved the ticket price. So a face-to-face class was, $22 or something, and an online class was $12. But what we've seen is about a net revenue about sitting at around sort of 60% of what we would have in a pre-COVID era for that stream of activity. So it's certainly been a significant contributor to our sustainability.
Great. And just a final question from our audience: what platform did you use to deliver the online classes, or have you tried a few and you're now onto something else?
Yeah, so we use Zoom for the actual delivery, but we have a ticketing system that we use called MindBody, which is what we do our face-to-face ticketing for our face-to-face classes.
I think it's what I do my online yoga with.
Lots of studios use MindBody. And so we were able to use MindBody for the ticketing. So that was the kind of mechanism for monetizing it, which meant it was really simple for those that were already attending our classes. They already had accounts and so on. And then, so you register in MindBody. We just uploaded a whole different kind of program and price categories and so on. And then once you've registered, I'm going to do ballet at 12 o'clock, you then 20 minutes before the actual class gets sent the Zoom link. And that's also part, I think, about why for us having a virtual studio technician attached to it, because they can then monitor and do the kind of correlations. Yep, this person's got the link and that person's showing up in the MindBody records. So it was a kind of check and balance as well, but it did mean we could monetize it, and it was quite a seamless process.
Great. Okay, fantastic. We'll come back to a little bit more of that topic soon. I want to bring in some of our folk from the assembly group, and I might go to you, Sarah, if that's okay. If you could just tell us a little bit, and this is kind of a shift with, we've been talking more about, I guess, the sort of the business aspects and some of that, some of that virtual classes stuff. I wondered, Sarah, if you could tell us a bit about what you've been doing with your group, which I understand is very porous and it ebbs and flows in terms of the members. but it's really about connecting with fellow artists and discussion and topics. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that for us.
Yeah, so kind of since the beginning, when kind of all the lockdowns were announced, we have been meeting as a community of dancers, predominantly in Melbourne, but also kind of all around the country. And it started as a really just like a check-in, kind of a caretaking, making sure everyone was okay, because yeah, in those initial weeks, we didn't have anyone looking after us. We didn't have, we didn't have a lot of information, and people were really scared. Most of our incomes completely evaporated. And that's not only our dance incomes, but also most independent artists have a job on the side. A lot of those are in customer service or hospitality, so they evaporated as well. So yeah, it really started as like, okay, let's check in, how is everyone? And Josh Wright kind of facilitated those early meetings for us, because yeah, we didn't have Zoom accounts, we didn't have administrators, we had like no one to redeploy us, and yeah, so it was really a space for us to check in with everyone, make sure everyone was okay, what people needed, and then it became a space for sharing information, and kind of figuring out who needed what, how to navigate these systems without the sort of infrastructure and the support. And then conversations very quickly kind of sprung up about how to advocate for ourselves as independent artists, because yeah, the group is pretty much anyone who signs in at any particular meeting. And we've kind of defined it as, if you have a dance practice, you are in the group. There is no kind of boundary to it.
How often are you meeting, or is that also kind of fluctuates a little bit, depends on need, or?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of there's been a meeting at least every second week. And over the last few weeks, there's been sort of like splinter groups that have kind of carved off to talk about more specific issues. So we've kind of tried to focus the conversations, because when you get, 50 artists in one Zoom, it does get hard to get anything done. So we've kind of, become a little more organized, and different people are heading up little subgroups to kind of work around issues. And yeah, it really became a space for talking about the structural difficulties that independent artists have always had, and that this isn't new. It's just revealed the precarity that we already knew we had, and this idea of how we can advocate for ourselves and have the industry acknowledge that independent artists are equal with the companies.
Yeah, great. And so really it's something that was there, this work was something that was sort of nascent. It was there, that you really, something that you wanted to do already, but this COVID environment has kind of, it brought it up to the surface. And I guess you've used these digital platforms to be able to come together. Mostly it's Victorian-based artists at this stage, isn't it?
Yeah, we have had a couple of people from around the country tuning in, some friends from Alice Springs and things like that, which is actually really nice to be able to see what those conversations are like in other communities. And we've also had the opportunity every 2 or 3 weeks to meet with the small dance orgs, which has been super valuable, because as I said, there's so much information that doesn't come through to independents, or it takes a little while, because we just don't have the resources to be able to speak directly to those decision makers. But yeah, the fact that we can all Zoom in from our bedrooms has made it happen in a way that it just wouldn't have otherwise. And there was organising happening, like last year, a bunch of dancers worked together for a couple of months to make a creative state submission, which was a big document that they wrote. So this kind of springs from existing organisations, but yeah, the frequency and the kind of efficiency of it has been aided by the digital space.
Right. Great. Joel, I'm going to throw to you now, and I'm just going to shift focus a little bit again back to practice. So I wondered, I saw recently on Facebook, I think it was, or Instagram, I saw you doing some early research on a work that you're started making, and we'll probably talk about that a bit later. But do you feel over these last sort of 2 or 3 months that your practice has changed in any way, or do you feel that you've responded in a different way than what you might perhaps starting a new piece of work?
Well, yeah, to state the obvious, it changed. I had to stop performing. And and then there was this kind of like moment that was quite stressful where we were suddenly getting flooded with, I mean, we've spoken about the word pivot, but there were lots of like similar words that we got flooded with, or kind of like, you need to, like, how do you take your practice online? How do you, and that was a bit of a stressful moment, especially for someone who makes work that is really about encounters between, like live encounters between the audience and the performer. Like literally, I think the art that I make is the opposite of physical distancing. So let me say one thing, a bit of a caveat. Actually, the big takeaway that I am taking away from this whole experience is actually how crucial what we do is. That actually their live performance is absolutely essential. I feel like that liveness, that encounter in the real world is something that everybody is missing now. So weirdly, I felt reassured. Like, because sometimes in the past, you know, when I go and see a multi-million-dollar Hollywood film, I'm like, why am I making what I make? And now I know why, because there's, no matter how much budget you throw at something, no matter how sophisticated the technology comes, I really believe that live performance is irreplaceable. That said, I still wanted to do stuff, right? So yeah, so I'm doing one of a bunch of artists who are selected to do Solitude 1, which is a home-based research residency through Chunky Move. It's kind of the early stages of it. And so what you were referring to is a series of videos. I basically, in my kind of pitch for Solitude 1, I said I would, because the basic idea is like, how the kind of the basic question of the program, I guess, is like, how can you continue a practice at home, kind of thing. So I didn't really know what that meant, and so, but I was kind of reflecting on two things that I'd noticed during COVID. One was the Tiger King phenomena, right? And so I had this image of these tigers pacing around in enclosed spaces, and I thought there was something poetic about the timing of that. And the other thing was
that you're wearing now a reference to that, or no?
That was no. Clearly, that's just like my subconscious.
By the way, yeah.
And the other image was of Pan Shanku, who was in the early days of the pandemic. There was that guy in China, in Wuhan, who ran 6,025 laps of his one-room apartment. He was a marathon runner. So what people might have seen on my Instagram account is me playing with this idea of pacing around in circles.
Yep.
And there's something about like when you've got, or you see inmates pacing around in circles, when you enclose someone who has more energy or more volume than the space in which they're enclosed, the instinct that we do is to go around in a circle. So yeah, it's early days. I don't know where this is leading. But then the other thing that I thought was interesting was I could use Instagram, which is hilarious because I literally don't know how to use Instagram, right? I don't even, like, I can't navigate it. But I thought what would be interesting is if I use Instagram to let people watch me do it. Yeah. So it became also like, I'm kind of like in confinement, but I'm also being surveilled while I do it. So yeah, like.
Is this performance, is it just going to be done in a digital way? Or do you think maybe when restrictions are taken away, removed, do you think you'll do it in a live performance context as well, or it's just way too early to know?
I have absolutely no idea. Yeah. I mean, what's really awesome about Solitude 1 is that they said they're not really pushing for a performance outcome necessarily. They're really giving us some time and space to do some actual just research, pure research.
Yeah. Right.
A work might come out of it. I don't know.
Yeah. And Lydia, am I right in thinking that you're also doing a new work for Solitude? Is that right? Can I bring you in here?
Yeah, you can. Hi. Yeah, I'm also a part of the program, and I think, like Joel, I do been a really beneficial time and space to be able to kind of develop on my practice in a concentrated way, because I feel like during this time when I don't have any structure, it's been a way of structuring my time because I've got my own studio, so that kind of helps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. And Lilian, you're, if I understand correctly, you're doing one of 5 commissions, is this right, as part of the new festival lead, which is Campbelltown Arts Centre and Arts House in Melbourne. Can you just tell us just a little bit about that while we're on this subject of practice? I think you're on mute, Lilian. Sometimes it gets stuck. Just.
Okay, is this better?
Yeah, that's great. Well done.
Well, this is the truth. I'm constantly having trouble with technology, so that's a bad timing for me. Yeah, I'm one of 5 artists participating in these commissions for Bleed Festival, the Biennale of the live event in Everyday Digital. Yeah. And yeah, making a work with fellow artist Emile Zeal. And originally our work was going to be a live performance. Then we thought, hey, let's actually challenge something about what our live performance practices are, and embrace something about Emile's practice and do a live stream performance and work out how to navigate that interaction. And then COVID hit and we were like, well, that's not interesting anymore. So it's turning into a slick film, which yeah, it's interesting, the journey that it's been on before even being observed or engaged with. So
yeah, great. Okay, fantastic. I mean, one of the things that I thought was interesting, I was having a chat with the artist Luke George, who most of you will know in the audience here today, and we were talking about how quickly dance artists and dance companies were, and many performing arts organisations, to put their work online. And I'm going to ask Anne about this a bit later, but you know, in terms of free online content and monetizing and things, which I find is really interesting. But Luke was talking about that he really didn't want to rush to that online space. He didn't feel that it was right for him at this time. And maybe a little bit to your point, Joel, you know, that thing of the live performance is the thing that really works for him. So I think it's interesting. I don't know if any of the artists here want to comment about that, but he certainly decided that he wanted to take a slower approach and not rush to put things online into you know, in that online context, and that it didn't serve his work well. Did anyone have, or does anyone have comments on that? Or...
Yeah, that was like the early conversations we had with the dance community. A lot of people were like, I don't feel ready to do that. I don't have the capacity to be innovative right now, or to kind of be generating in such a space of uncertainty. So I think lots of people were kind of quite terrified of the idea of having to change their entire practices. And now I think we're seeing how adaptive artists already are and have to be always, but that the digital platform suits some practices and not others. And just that division, access to technology kind of, and the way that existing practices can meet technology or cannot. And I think that difference is really becoming clear, who's kind of not able to jump on board
or not ready yet, or just need a bit more time. I mean, you know, sometimes things just need more time, don't they? Yeah.
And also so willingness. Some people are just like, no, I don't want to. And I think that's really great yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to jump in and say pretty much that, like, for me, it's come down to that main factor of, well, even though in some ways it is one of the only, or the only option, yeah, is it right for me? Do I have the passion to put my practice into this new funnel when I don't think it's necessarily what is going to serve the work and therefore serve me? And it's a lot of energy. And as Joel was saying, you know, coming back to what dance actually is, and that being about the body, researching experiences of bodies with themselves, with audiences, as not a 2D flat image, or the body is not as a shape maker, but actually as like an energetic source that shares information and communicates something via its humanness. That's what kind of is a problem with the screen, which, you know, we all have maybe a 1 hour capacity to Zoom, and half of that time you're like, oh, I'm gonna have a tea, some water, I'll check my phone. Like, the attention is distracted. So as a performer, giving to a tiny camera on a screen and not knowing how you're being observed, the one-way dialogue is kind of not what dance is about, essentially.
And
also, can I just add just a quick thing? There are people who are already working in that space. They're called Netflix, and they do a really good job at it. Like, I kind of always really felt like, you know, there's heaps of amazing content online. You know, like, I didn't feel the need to like compete with my measly resources.
Yeah, and there are obviously a lot of dance artists who they make work specifically for broadcast or for screen, or that's a big part of their practice. So it's not so much about the pivot or the adaptation; it's just already sort of inbuilt into their practice. So, Anne, I'm gonna flip back to you if I can, bring you back in, and just wondered if you can talk for us a little bit about some of the challenges that the organisation, Sydney Dance Company, has gone through this adaptation period. So, I mean, they're so numerous. It's not to talk about every one of them, but I guess maybe what you didn't know before, or what sort of advice you might give to other organisations who are going through something similar. So yeah, just a couple of points that are sort of front of mind in terms of some of the challenges.
Yeah, look, I think there's some kind of delivery challenges that are kind of quite lo-fi but quite material as to how your work gets received. So we kind of went through a learning process about that experience of delivering something on Zoom. And Lilian, it's really interesting to hear you talk about that thing about it being this one-way thing and kind of performing to the camera. And whilst, you know, in this context, I'm talking about dance classes, but nonetheless, there's still this kind of output of energy needed that's quite challenging. And so we actually went through a process of about how do we make that interactive so that the teachers have a real dynamism and have capacity to actually engage with the students. And so we determined that we would do only live, you know, we started only with kind of live delivery rather than, you know, pre-recorded and you stream it at your own time. We, you know, lighting and sound were the kind of crucial things for the experience of a receiver. So, you know, we went through a process of Zoom kind of backdrops out music. Like if you're talking, it goes, oh, there's music, I'll just sub-edit that, which of course in dance class was not that helpful. So we kind of tested all different mechanisms and ended up that AirPods were actually the most effective. So we sent someone off to JB Hi-Fi to line up and buy 10 pairs of AirPods, and we went to Bunnings and bought lights on stand and literally drove them around to teachers' houses to actually give them a little tech kit to actually be able to deliver it. So there was some kind of just like, you know, little iterative technical learnings. I think from an administrative process, it was, there was a huge amount of work for myself and my CFO about that kind of, wow, the complete, you know, the ground's been ripped out. What does it look like? What does the future of this look like? And the board, of course, were incredibly anxious. What does all this mean? So there was a huge amount of pressure to be able to kind of reforecast, and you're like staring into a muddy abyss going, I have no idea. But kind of working through that systematically, going, well, it could be like this or it could be like this. And, you know, 3 months shutdown, 6 months shutdown, 9 months shutdown. I think the thing that I've, you know, and I've always been someone that kind of reaches out to the community of other companies and so on a fair bit anyway, but certainly that has amped up over this time. You know, it's finding people that are in a similar position to you and actually using them as a support base and asking the questions and sharing resources has been.
And has that mainly been with other dance companies, other executive directors, and etc., or has it also been, it's been all different art forms or even different sectors, in fact?
All art forms. So certainly there was one where all the, you know, very early on, the major dance companies that have ensembles were like, hey, what are you guys doing with your ensembles? Are they working from home? Are you doing classes? How are you actually managing their time and what's happening there? There was a, you know, there was a kind of reach out to some of the smaller companies. I had a lot of, in those very early shutdown days, a lot of calls from people going, hey, what are you guys doing? So there was, for me, a real sense that we, as a company, had a responsibility to share what we learned as quickly and as broadly as we could and as freely as we could, and to make myself and other people in the company available to kind of share those resources, everything from, you know, the risk management plan to, as we're coming out of this, the kind of COVID emergence plan. And they've been really good conversations. I think administratively, the management of a team, I mean, we have, I think, 60 people plus another sort of 40 casual, 60 full-timers, 55, 60 full-timers managing that remotely. You know, we shut down the offices, everyone went to Zoom meetings and Teams meetings and so on. That's been really interesting because it very quickly showed up those people that could adapt and could continue to be productive. And it also very quickly went, oh, there's some challenges there about this kind of workspace and work style for some people, and how do we manage through that? And really the thing for me is I seriously upped the amount of communication I did within the organisation. So we ended up setting up a daily, what we call town hall meeting. So it was like a little 20-minute catch up at lunchtime, but everybody came to it, and we started rotating the chair of it. So actually it's become this time where people, you know, suddenly the dancer who's, you know, our studios and our offices are normally they're in separate buildings at the moment. And so suddenly the dancers knew the finance assistant's name, who they may never have actually seen because they're someone that sits in a different office, in a different building. So there's been a lot of kind of collegiality built within the organisation, and then kind of across sectors. You know, we have a regular meeting on Mondays of all the CEOs of the big New South Wales based companies to kind of go, hey, what's happening? What have you learned? What have you heard? And, you know, so those kind of conversations have been really important.
Yeah, I've got one question that's sort of related to that, and it's from Jeffrey Watson. He's interested to know what challenges and bureaucratic processes a large company, such as Sydney Dance Company, faces when shifting your artistic and outreach programming. If Sydney Dance Company were to create a new program with smaller scale performances, for example, what would that involve from an administrative perspective? So I guess in this time frame, it's just some high level things in terms of sharing, you know, if you're doing something on a smaller scale, what might be some of those bureaucratic hoops that you've jumped through that you could share with the audience?
Yeah, interestingly, things on a smaller scale or bigger scale don't necessarily take more or less work. It's kind of a similar amount of work to do a small scale thing as a big scale thing, in a sense, when you're a company of our scale, because you still have to bring in someone from marketing, and you still have to bring in someone from education, excuse me, and you still have to bring in someone from finance and programming. So it's, excuse me, hang on a sec.
That's okay. Yeah. I'll just give you a minute, Anne. Just give me a thumbs up, or I can jump to someone else. You all right?
Okay. So I think in smaller scale things, it's at this time we've been able to be quite nimble because we've been very available to each other. And in a way, it's kind of increased the nimbleness, because we're like, well, all the rule books are kind of gone, and you can kind of do whatever, and people jump in and do whatever. I've had a dancer who's been working in our marketing team and so on. But on a longer term thing, it's kind of how do you keep the learnings from it? Because the tendency for a company is to kind of revert back to the way you used to do it.
So I think, yeah, I want to have just in a few minutes before we wrap up, I want to just have a conversation with everyone, just get some points on what people think they might like to keep and what they might want to let go. I think we've all got some of those. I'm going to jump to you again, Joel, if I may. A question from Ian R.T. Colles. How has it been as an Aboriginal dancer and choreographer that uses country as muse? How has this shifted for you in isolation, since you've been in isolation?
It's been quite hard. Yeah, like going back up onto country, because I'm Wiradjuri, so that's central New South Wales.
Yeah.
That would be often a way, like if I got stuck, say, like, I would like try and organize to go up there. So yeah, that's been tough not being able to go up there. I've basically been using this time as a good opportunity to do a lot more of the business side of running a dance practice rather than trying to be too creative. The thing that I will take away is I was supposed to have a creative development in April, and instead I turned it into a little all the whole cast and crew met for 2 hours and we just did kind of brainstorming and writing and stuff. And it was actually really, really fruitful and creative. And even when we do return to normal, I've been thinking about how I might include a kind of that like online pre-research phase into my work. That might be something that I take out of this period.
Right. And I've got a question here from Alexander Powers, and this is for the assembly group. So please feel free, any of you, to jump in on this one. Alexander would love to hear more about the assembly, its outcomes so far, and its goals for the future. So I guess with very limited time, what maybe Sarah, you could start with just a couple of points about goals, aims. I guess it's a bit early to know what the outcomes would be, but
yeah, I mean, I think so far we already have had great outcomes in just being able to speak more with the organizations around us, like the ones quite close with us, and be able to kind of have a seat at those tables when conversations are being had. But I think, yeah, our goals are just to have a space for dialogue and be able to articulate what it is independent artists need and also what we provide. I think we are expected to do pretty much everything ourselves. Like, I think, yeah, I just feel like the experience of City Dance Company, for example, and the experience of independent artists just could not have been more different in this time. Like, we were so alone, and that's why we formed this kind of space to meet online. And I think we just need to be a part of the decision-making processes far more than we are, because we are the bedrock of this industry, you know, like between the community, the independent dance community in Australia, the amount of output compared to the amount of income is astronomical. The amount of audience that all of our work receives it's huge. Like, we're kind of treated like the kind of almost as an afterthought sometimes. And it's just been so clear in this time how many talented and passionate people there are working in dance, how many skills we all have, and how underappreciated those skills often are. And I think it's super interesting to hear Anne talk about dancers being redistributed to other roles in the company. It's like, yes, that's because independent dancers do all of this work all of the time, and we're never paid for it, and we're never really acknowledged. Even trying to, like, I've been trying to look for work in other industries, and I have 10 years of experience making and producing work, and none of it applies. You know, I'm not able to transfer those skills into other industries. And I think, yeah, for so many of us, this has been a space for figuring out how we can make the work we make sustainable and stay in it, because so many independent artists are really looking for other things. Yeah. Young ones, old ones, like across the spectrum, people are worried, and they need support.
Yeah. Lydia, do you have any comments on that? I mean, I understand you're sort of an emerging artist. Could I say an emerging artist? Or
yeah. So
it doesn't need to be that. It's more than that, of course. But yeah, just interested, you know, there's different perspectives, you know, and different sort of, you know, we're coming at it from different angles, I guess, today. So I'm just interested in what your thoughts are, and you know, how you found this kind of collective online environment. Has it been supportive?
I think it's been incredibly supportive, and I think that as I was helping run the emerging artists group, a subgroup of the think tank, and it is incredible to kind of understand that everyone is going through or has gone through very similar trajectories after leaving an institution or starting to emerge into a community. And I feel like during this time, the think tank platform has given us the opportunity to see that everyone is in very similar boats, and that we are kind of able to start articulating what we're all experiencing. I think that having conversations with people are like, this is the most amount of money I've earned on JobKeeper or JobSeeker. And, you know, someone in one of the think tanks was like, that's really sad, you know, and it is. And we feel, I think, the opportunity to have money where you don't have to work a casual job and all of that and to have an artistic practice or just a practice where you're getting paid for that has been incredible. And I think it has allowed the think tank to emerge from that, because we've all had time and space and also energy and care, and we can care for each other. You know, and I think it's hard to look for the future, because it's hard to see the future in the arts in Australia. But I think that the community is really strong, and that makes us, that's what the future is, I guess.
Lilian, do you have any, just flowing on from Sarah and Lydia's comments, I mean, do you have anything in terms of any suggestions around how to digitally amplify this message, or your message as independent artists? Or, you know, have you got any other comments around, you know, flowing on from that?
I mean, I think that question of how to digitally amplify anything right now is a really good one, because it's also, I guess, just from my own perspective, I guess I keep coming back to what the problems of this digital space are, and problems as in generative good ones, or just generative. I don't know if good or bad is there, but generative and limiting. And it comes back to that thing of what do we want to do? What do we want the future to be or function like or as? How much do we want to put in place the importance or put weight into digital space as the primary space for anything? And how much can we take from the digital space or utilize it when it's essential or helpful? And also know that if we are active away from the digital space, just having trust that we are active as artists. And I guess it is this problem of like accessibility to the online space and the capacity to engage with it as any kind of person, an artist or not. And I guess just for me, it keeps coming back to this like weighting of like, what is practice? What is research? Does dance have to be online? Does it have to be shared right now to be valued? Like, you know, if it's not seen on Instagram, you know, which is, you know, it's fine to be on Instagram. It's fine to be sharing things via YouTube, via Facebook, all of that. But it just, for me, keeps coming back to the thing of, do we only value what we see in those spaces right now, or can we have faith that artists are working very hard, as we always have, behind closed doors in studios like we always have, or at home, and that at the right time for the work to emerge into the real tangible space, it will, in the form it's supposed to take, rather than a compromised form or compromised practice.
A slight move away. This one's for you, Anne. Do you think there are other similarities to other art forms such as music and literature that have had to adapt to digital disruption? So I guess I've just been, you know, like music, for example, is one of the really obvious ones, and has been through so many upheavals over the last 20 years. And now it's just, you know, something we do. We stream music. We don't buy CDs unless we you know, really want to. We don't have to. And literature has also gone through some really interesting changes in terms of business models and, you know, buyers' kind of, you know, appetite for books, you know, or just digital content. And now they're working in a hybrid way. Do you see similarities? And are there platforms that you use to monetize what you're putting out there for Sydney Dance Company?
So look, there's certainly some similarities, and there's certainly some challenges. I think the thing about music rights is something that's a real challenge for dance going into this digital space, and the kind of you know, when COVID happened, One Music Australia went, oh, if you've got a music license for face-to-face classes, we'll migrate that temporarily for digital, but it must only be for an Australian reach. The technical delivery platforms don't necessarily have a geo-blocking capacity. So there's you know, some challenges there about keeping on the right side of the kind of music licensing regulations, but actually being able to deliver work. That's a fairly big, I think, industry challenge that has to come forward. I think, you know, Lilian was actually, I'm not sure if it was Lilian or Lydia, talking about that thing that dance is quite a, you know, is this kind of visceral thing. And for audiences, having that live experience is a really different thing. What's the migration pathway from that to screen? And I think for us, it was interesting. We haven't gone down the route at this point in time of putting filmed of works up, you know, online. And we haven't
not broadcasting in the way that some of the companies that have maybe more of the classical companies, for example, have a back catalogue, that kind of thing, or international companies. You haven't gone down that.
We haven't gone down that road for a couple of reasons at this point in time. One, as a contemporary company, you know, for Raf as an artist, it was, and for us as a company, it was really about what's the kind of response actually to this situation? What does this situation artistically drive for us as a company? The series that we produced, Quattro, which we produced in collaboration with Sydney Symphony and rolled out, was really about an artistic response. It was created and filmed for that kind of delivery mechanism rather than an on-stage piece that was filmed and then rolled out.
And that's 4 pieces, isn't it? Four separate films that you released over June. Is that right?
We released one each Friday over June, and that's been really interesting. We've had about 190,000 views.
Yep.
And so that thing about distribution is a really interesting. What is that distribution model? And I think, you know, there's a huge amount of challenge because so many companies over this time have put so much free content out there that the capacity to then monetize a performance or recoup any of the costs around that are really challenged. And
have you charged for those 190? What was the figure again?
190,000 views.
So you don't charge for those views?
No, but
that brings up an interesting sort of thing around, and some of the other artists here were talking about, you know, that valuing the artist, and you can value artists in many ways, but obviously they have to be paid, etc., for their time and their work and their expertise. But I mean, we won't have enough time now, but for me, that brings up some really interesting kind of, you know, challenges for.
Absolutely, it is really challenging. We debated a lot. For us, when we first rolled them out, we rolled them out for our donor and audience base. We've cancelled 64 shows this year. There's 64 shows of audiences where we're like, hey, stick with us. We're going to be back next year. Here's a gift. Here's something for you. You know, we've cancelled our shows. We've asked you to donate your ticket value. We've asked you to take a credit note. You know, some people, of course, have asked for a refund. So in part, it was about how do we maintain actually the other revenue streams like ticket sales or donations and philanthropy, and how do we keep an engagement with that kind of bigger family or that kind of support network around Sydney Dance Company.
Yeah, okay, great. So now, Anne, I'm very aware that you have to go very soon. You've got another meeting, and I'd love to chat a little bit more with some of the other panel here when you've gone, but this was a question for all the panelists, and perhaps, Anne, you could do this one for us first before you head off. And the question is around would a digital program to assist cultural practitioners, artists and arts workers from across art forms and career levels explore developing digital skills assist? So I read that badly, but hopefully you understand. So it's really, I guess, coming, you know, do you think capacity building around this digital kind of capacity for artists of all career levels would be something that would be useful for our dance artists and community?
From my perspective, I think it absolutely would. I think there's a particular pedagogy about using digital space and about how you kind of talk to audiences, and my observation from our own artists has been some of them have felt far more comfortable in that space than others. Some of them have far more skills already in that space. But I think, you know, COVID has been the great disruptor, and I don't think anything will ever go back to being what it was. And I think, quite frankly, digital and the way people consume everything from Netflix to live performance to, you know, chats with their grandmother is going to be forever changed. And I think we can't kind of walk back from that now. It just is part of us now going forward.
Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, one final one for you, Anne, I promise. 1 minute. What would you like to keep, and what do you think you'd like to say goodbye to from kind of the adaptation piece that many pieces that you've gone through this last 3 months?
I think the key piece is about better workplace flexibility, about kind of better autonomy for people in the organisation, about, you know, being output focused rather than process focused. I think that's a really good one. I think it's been fantastic giving people the space to be able to demonstrate the breadth of their skills. And Sarah, you talked about, you know, independent artists have all these skills, and that's true of all artists have these incredible range of skills. So it's been terrific to actually have enough space and time in the organisation to allow that to kind of flourish. And I really want to find ways to continue that instead of having these kind of siloed departments. I think I'll be happy if I never have to spend 8 hours back-to-back meetings on Zoom ever again, because, you know, I think that's exhausting for everybody and not that fun. Yeah.
Great. All right. Well, we're going to let you go, and thank you so much for joining us. Good luck with everything. Congratulations on all of the amazing work that you and the company have been doing. Thank you. Yeah, we look forward to connecting with you in a theatre, hopefully in the not too distant future.
Who knows when? All right. Bye.
Thanks, Anne. Bye. I might continue just for a couple of minutes if I can. I would love to just hear your thoughts before I wrap this session up. What you would keep, what you would like to let go, or if that's not a question for you, you know, if you've got any other comments or things that you'd like to sort of put forward. So just a couple of comments each, if you can. And I'm going to start with Joel, because Joel, you've been sitting there very patiently for a few minutes now.
Well, I kind of mentioned what I would keep, so I'll take your other offer. I would say, from my perspective, coronavirus is the secondary threat to my art practice. The primary threat is the state of funding of the arts in this country and the way that's distributed, and how, as picking up on what Sarah said, how little of that lands in the lap of those who are doing the heavy lifting in our industry. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the coronavirus being over, but I'm also looking forward to seeing, I've been kind of peripherally involved with Think Tank a little bit, and I've been super proud to be a part of a community that's starting to charge up, and I'm excited to see what that happens, because dancers are extraordinary people, and I'm excited, and I'm really proud to be a part of a community who've decided to use this moment instead of hiding off and becoming super competitive, but to actually get together and work together to see if we can chart a better future for ourselves. So that's what I'm looking forward to at the end of this.
Right, beautifully said. Lilian, any final comments?
Oh, there's so much to say.
What would you keep? What would you like to never do again? Maybe during this time. Or maybe in relation to this, you know, the assembly or think tank, we're using interchangeable names here.
Yeah, I guess going on what Joel was saying, like the capacity, I mean, it's a wavering capacity for each of us, but the capacity to dial into each other's needs and be generous, and as more than just one body and one practice, you know, contemplate what dance even is or can be. That's really special, and it does take a lot of space and a financial support for people to have capacity to not be so competitive and for themselves for a moment in an environment that, because of the state of funding and the culture of how people perceive arts, has been driven into high competition for a long time. So I think it's pretty amazing what can happen in a very short amount of time given the right conditions, and I think it's something that most of us will hold on to as much as we can. What I'm looking forward to getting rid of is the 2D-ness of my body, which is maybe, I don't even really understand what 1D is, but I feel like I'm flattening out more and more. And I look forward to a time when we can be reminded what it is to be a dancing body, and not just a body who thinks of themselves as a label with the label of a dancer, but actually going like, oh yeah, what is this thing that I've been doing my whole life and researching, and
Okay.
I know what the value is and how can I share it again.
Great. Okay, Lydia, final comments?
Yeah, I think what everyone's been saying about community, taking that outside of the digital space and into a future that doesn't look very good for the arts at all, and that hopefully we can kind of advocate and show, I guess, other people that we do have value. And I think that the think tank is a big part of that, kind of knowing that we do internally and as a community, but how do you actually broadcast that is a different thing. I think what COVID has kind of already taken away is kind of a sense of competition, and that we're competing for money at this stage. And I think that that's a thing to take forward, is that we're a group of people and a group of artists, and we're only as good as the people around us.
Okay, great, thank you. And Sarah, final words from you.
Yeah, I mean, I think similar lines. I think the most amazing part of this has been the kind of generosity and solidarity, and I would like to see that continue and expand. It would be great to have the companies who do have more resources exchanging more and more with the independent sector, and just the acknowledgement of how much we do provide the industry to be more valued for what it is we do. I would like to leave behind the screen and the 2D. But yeah, I guess on a really practical level, the thing I wish that I could take with me is the universal basic income we're receiving right now, because without that, we would not have been able to do this, because we would have been having to make a living to pay our rent. And I think it really exposes what does happen when there is less scarcity, is that there's more generosity, and there's so much more generation of ideas, creativity, solidarity, community. So I would love to see that. I'm also just going to pop the email address of the Think Tank Assembly in. If anyone is a dancer or dance aligned and wants to kind of keep up with what's going on, email us. We can add you to the list.
There's been some really great engagement in this chat, and apologies to those people who put in questions that I didn't quite get to. That was, I feel like it was the tip of the iceberg, but it was so great to have you all with us. I really appreciate it. And I can see from this chat that, you know, people were really, really engaged. We value what you do. I value what you do. I can't wait to come and see you in a theatre in 3D. It's probably, I'm gonna have to be a little more patient. But I really appreciate your time today and your creativity and being so generous with your practice. Yeah, I think it was great also to have a dance focus on this in this platform. So from an Australia Council point of view, I'm very pleased about that, and thank you to Renee Moore who produced it today. If you wouldn't mind just staying there, I just have to do a few wrapping up comments. And then we'll finish. So if you'd like to join the Think Inside the Square panel, please send us an email at digitalsolutions@australiacouncil.gov.au. We also have the Creative Connections webinar series that takes place on Wednesday and Fridays, and this week is the last of our First Nations Roundtable series, where we'll be handing it over to and inviting members of our audience to join the panel. You can find further details on the Australia Council website. We'd like to acknowledge all of the Facebook group members who continue to give feedback each week, supporting fellow members, sharing ideas and digital tips, as well as the members that continue to share their own digital adaptation stories. So that's it for this week. In next week's Think Inside the Square, we're taking a deep dive into social media engagement and the user journey. So once again, thank you for joining us, and very best of luck. And I look forward to seeing and connecting with you again soon. Take care. Thanks.